A new tank branch has appeared in the Soviet tech tree with update 1.71. Well, not exactly a branch. Let's call it a twig instead. 3 vehicles. But what vehicles? Following on from the KV-3 are the double-barreled tanks. They look like they came straight out of a diesel punk novel. However, these tanks were not only designed, prototypes were even tested.
The concept of a multiple gun mount is nothing new for the military. Artillery is a base, and the representatives of the new sub-branch in World of Tanks follow this principle.
Here are the beauties. 3 hard-boiled and menacing vehicles. The IS-22, IS-32, ST-2. With the numbers come many new features. These tanks are equipped with double-barreled guns. They all have 3 firing modes. What more could you want?
Information, probably. The first firing mode is cyclic. It works in the same way as most tanks. The next firing mode is sequential. It's quite similar to the auto-reloading system of the Italian vehicles, but slightly different. The third, unique mode is salvo fire. In this mode, the tank can fire from both barrels simultaneously. But first things first. The first vehicle of the sub-branch is the IS-22 at Tier 8. It's based on the IS-2 hull of 1944 with the straightened front. The running gear carries a big turret and is 1 road wheel longer. That's why the IS-22 doesn't traverse as fast as its prototype, but it retains the good mobility. Regarding the hull armour, the sides are the same as the IS, but the hull front is thicker. Guns with armour penetration of 160mm or less can't get through it. In this projection, there's only one vulnerable spot for them, the commander's cupola. The front of a turret is better protected than the hull. Due to its round shape, the effective armour thickness varies, and a shot at the wrong area at the wrong angle can disappoint an opponent of any tier.
So, the situation is the following. Always hide your hull. You can expose your turret to Tier 7 or lower vehicles, but there's no guarantee against Tier 8s. I've warned you.
The IS-22, equipped with the top-end modules, boasts 100mm guns. The armour penetration is standard. The rate of fire is high. Average damage per shot is 300, with decent damage per minute. The accuracy and aiming time are good, and the stabilisation is simply excellent.
Yes, the damage per shot of 300 might seem insufficient for a Tier 8 heavy tank, but this was intended. With this set of the characteristics, it'll be much easier to master the mechanics of double-barreled armaments. Firing from the IS-22 is enjoyable and simple, and its relatively low alpha damage won't affect your general efficiency. All in all, the gun is good. Just what you need to familiarize yourself with a max pain branch.
The cyclic mode of fire for the double-barreled tanks works in the following way. You fire 1 round and reload. Then you fire again. Everything seems normal, but there's one small nuance. The shot mechanics work differently for double-barrel tanks. Other vehicles in the game fire upon clicking the left mouse button, while the double-barrel tanks fire the moment you release it. But if you reassign the button for salvo preparation in the game settings, this problem will disappear and your tank will start firing as normal.
Also, the turret moves by itself.
Yes, but not really. When firing, the 2 barrels alternate. The active barrel has a marker. By default, it's always the left barrel at the start of battle. After you've fired, the right barrel becomes active. The tank turret turns slightly so that it can fire at where you're aiming. In sniper mode, the camera is tied to the barrel of the active gun. After the shot, it moves to the axis of the second barrel after a slight delay. You may think that someone has pushed you, but it's intentional. This way you can see if you're aiming at a wall or another obstacle, and not cause you to waste a shell when playing from behind cover or utilizing the terrain.
Or using your angles. A Soviet heavy with -7 degrees. -7, Carl.
Well, it's not exactly related, but yes, the depression angle is -7 degrees. Thank you. Tier 9 is occupied by the IS-32, and as it's easy to see, it's based on the good old IS-3. Its sides kept all the best qualities of its prototype and can withstand any hits if played correctly. The hull front is now better armoured, the upper glacis is 145mm thick, the turret is as strong as ever. It's enough to give you a sense of confidence against same tier and lower tier opponents. The weak spots are the lower glacis plate and the barely visible commander's cupola, but it won't be that hard for guns with armour penetration of 280mm and higher to penetrate the IS-32.
Nevertheless, the armour is good. There's even more to it. Even with all this kit, the IS-32 is surprisingly mobile. It kept the speed of its progenitor and has almost the same manoeuvrability. Well, it's not like it could take a side job in a cab company, but the numbers are quite decent. It's an agile one.
Compared to the guns of the IS-22, our hero has a higher caliber armour penetration and damage per shot. The other characteristics are quite typical of a Tier 9 Soviet heavy tank, and since the depression angles and stabilization are excellent, it's very convenient to use its guns.
Convenient? Convenient is when you manage to fit into your sneakers wearing thick socks. And in this case, with good armor and dynamics, it gives you the feeling of superiority. You reach positions among the first group, you have both barrels loaded, and...
yes, it's called the sequential firing mode.
this is called a shot.
Switching between guns takes 5 seconds. You can't fire while the timer is red.
And one more shot.
That's right. To repeat, you need to wait while both guns are loaded. Just don't get too greedy. If you fire while the second gun is reloading, its reload will reset. Sometimes it's better to wait just a few more seconds. And no, you can't load different shell types in each barrel. A little thing, but it's worth mentioning.
Finally, we've reached the summit, the crown of the branch. Powerful, menacing, the one that could lend his nose to Lord Voldemort but wouldn't do it. The ST2.
Interesting analogy. But in reality, this tank had a different history. The ST2 has been created using draft projects from design engineers Chosovnikov and Garnin. They submitted them to the Inventions Department of the Red Army, together with the ST1 project. In their idea, the twin guns should provide the ST2 with an exceptional rate of fire, and also the best adjustment fire and a powerful salvo. To fire a salvo, you need to hold the fire button for 2.5 seconds until the scale is filled. This is the time of salvo preparation. When the scale is filled, the salvo will be fired automatically. After the shot, the reload is locked for 4 seconds. It's very simple to cancel the salvo preparation. Just release the button.
Yeah, it's all clear. But I think we're missing the point here. A salvo means 880 damage. Just boom! 880. The damage per shot is 440. Armor penetration is 258 millimeters. The time for switching between guns and salvo preparation is the same as the Tier 9 tank. And the time of gun locking after the salvo is 1 second less. This is pure power. With the best gun depression angles among all Soviet heavy tanks. And the same excellent stabilization. Just awesome.
However, don't get too emotional. You should watch the aiming reticle attentively when preparing a salvo to use it effectively. It shows whether there's an opponent in your line of fire. If the barrel is aimed directly at your target, the corresponding arc will be solid. If there's something in your way, or the gun isn't aimed at a target, the arc appears broken. In case both barrels look in the wrong direction, the whole circle appears broken.
As someone said earlier, yes, but not really. There can be a fence or a car in the shell's way, but you can cause damage when firing through them. The system only shows the presence of an obstacle, but not its type. Whether you can penetrate it or not, that's another question. It's not that hard, right?
Well, relatively. After the salvo, the shells travel parallel to each other. That's why the distance between the impact points doesn't change because of the shot distance, but their location may change. for example, if a vehicle is angled. Additionally, the impact point is calculated only for the shell that flies out of the active barrel, and the trajectory of the second shell is strictly tied to it.
However, both shells are calculated independently after the hit.
Exactly. That's why the combination of outcomes can vary. One shell penetrates armor, another doesn't. One shell causes damage above average, another below average. One shell penetrates armor, another bounces, and so on.
But our hero can bounce off shells as well. Yes, it's the most sluggish compared to its predecessors, but it's also the most protected one. The ST2 has excellent all-round armor protection and 2,500 hit points. Well, the lower glacis, the driver's port, and the commander's cupola are there to be hit, of course. But just look at everything else. It's really impressive. The ST2 can confidently rely on its armor when fighting against same-tier heavy tanks. It hides its hull and becomes a stronghold for those tanks on the second line of attack. It's not a super heavy tank like the German or Japanese heavies, but it's close.
Exactly. The role of the ST2 in battle is a press that pushes through the enemy defense, slowly if the opponents resist, and a bit faster if they don't. It should play from its turret against Tier 10 tanks, using the terrain folds on the open maps and cover on the urban ones. And it's quite convenient to do in both cases. It's enough to hide your hull and
show everyone who's the boss here. Here's the ultimate pleasure: salvo. The entire sub-branch of the double-barreled Soviet tanks is an embodiment of raw primal power. Yes, you can hunt a mammoth in a coordinated and organized way. You can track it over a long period of time and set up traps. But you can also hit it hard when playing these vehicles. Just look at that. Yeah, it's irrational. Yeah, it's impulsive. But look at how enjoyable it is. These vehicles seem to feed off the enemy's fear. They stir emotions, and all of them have two hefty clubs for any mammoth they come across. And the ST2 has the biggest clubs.